Hello, everybody.
Hello.
We are just about to start. And I lost part of my screen. There's that. Okay. Let me get the presentation up and we will get started. I'm Amy Siegel, and I'm the Director of Programs here at ASA.
And I'm Tina Wiseman, your seventh team member, also known as a Strategic Planning Specialist, which is really a long title.
So we'll go ahead and turn off our webcams and get started with the screen sharing. If anybody has questions today, you have the, oh, it looks like somebody, oh, Logansport is here. We do have somebody's already found the question button. If you have any questions or need any help, just send a message. Tina keeps an eye on those, and we'll get you taken care of.
Hi, Logansport, and everybody else out there.
There we go. So we are here today to talk about root causes.
Something near and dear to our heart.
Yes, you'll probably hear our enthusiasm on this topic because Tina and I are a little obsessed with root causes. How can we know what to do until we know why? So we'll get into that. So we're going to talk first about facilitating this month's discussion. This month, our student body point person, and hopefully your student body point person is present. If not, make sure you pass this on. The student discussion prompt is an open-ended question. What is getting in the way of learning at our school? And I'm going to go over again. We've said this a few times this year, but it is just so important to make sure that you give all of your students the opportunity to answer that question. We've had a few schools who are only talking to their student councils and their honor society students, and basically what we end up with are really engaged, high achieving students. And when we look at our SMART goals, most of the time we're not talking about necessarily our highly engaged, high achieving students. So it's important to make sure that you're hearing from all students. And we're finding schools doing this in lots of ways. We're having teachers doing writing prompts. We have Google documents that are open. And I know that this is one of those questions where sometimes we hear things that we don't like, but those can be hard truths. And when we have a chance to listen to them, a lot of times they take us to the interventions that are really going to change things at our school. So one more encouragement to make sure you give everybody a voice in that student body discussion. Before the discussion, before your council discussion this time around, you need to have your achievement goals person make sure that your priority areas of concern are entered accurately, your SMART goals have been entered, and that all of your January submissions have met criteria. You're not going to be able to start your root causes work until all of those January submissions have met criteria. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and walk you through the council discussion. We know that some will be doing this online, and some will probably choose to do this as an in-person meeting, and there are good reasons to do both. The root causes, as you probably know from past years, there's a lot for your council to look at. Some decide that it's going to be better if they can do that in their own time, and so they'll do the online discussion only. Some really want to have some, the big talks. This is one of those meetings that can really, when we start going through the root cause data, and those self-studies, those can lead to some really big discussions. And a lot of, sometimes it's just better to do those in person. So whichever way you decide to go, we'll have all the tools that you need. Okay, so starting our council discussion video. Hello, my name is Amy Siegel, and I am ACA's Director of Programs.
And I'm Tina Wiseman, a Strategic Planning Specialist with ACA, and I work with all of the SI2 schools. First thing we're going to do is just a quick review of where we are up to this point. This is during the first semester. Of course, we were implementing the current SIP. So it's sort of a dual thing right now. Last spring, the current SIP that's in place was built. It was put into place with the beginning of the school year. It's running along kind of under that little humming that goes on. That's just keeping everything going every day. But now, since it's the second semester, we are getting to the point to where now we are creating next year's SIP. So it's really, it's not really a balancing act because everything is up, running, and should be in good shape. So what we're looking at now is, given who we are now and the new student data that we have, the latest, newest data, what adjustments do we need to make to our SIP?
We started that off this year. Last month, we did the goals update. Before that, in first semester, as Tina said, we were looking at our interventions and how they were getting implemented. Last month, we had you discuss an update to your goals. And today, we're going to talk about root causes. And Tina, I'll let you.
All right. As Amy and I said earlier, root causes are near and dear to our heart because anybody can look at numbers, anybody can just kind of haphazardly throw things into place. But what we're talking about now are the root causes, are the things that are getting in the way. And that is so important that we really have those discussions.
Root causes answer the question, why aren't more students reaching the benchmarks in our goals? So, like I said to your steering team earlier, we're looking at the why. Why are the kids already there? And we find that root causes may be general and things that impact all subjects, all your courses and all your standards, things like poor attendance, lack of discipline. Those are often school culture things that when we change those things, it changes everything in our school, and achievement goes up in lots of subjects.
As you'll recall at the last meeting, we talked about PAIs and SMART goals. And that was narrowing down the specific areas, sometimes a specific subject or a course or a standard that you were looking at and you weren't satisfied with where it was currently at. So those scores need to come up. So some examples of this would be lessons on ratios that are absent from a 7th grade curriculum. Maybe that students, and here's examples of the root causes of that. So when you look at low grades on maybe one of the masteries of standards, then you get into, as Amy said, the why. And so then you see that you start talking about and pulling out what's going on to keep this data from moving. Root causes are supported by data, and that's what makes everything click. When you look at the data, you're going to see that 7% of the students are absent more than 10 times during the school year, according to school records. As we all know, kids have to be in the seats. They have to be in attendance to know what's going on. So, of course, the root cause there would be there's some poor attendance going on. Another one might be with student engagement. On a survey, the surveys that we get, it could be that 67% of all students reported that instructional practices are not engaging. And there again, sometimes you're going to have those ouch moments. It's very good to get the mindset right now that we're not picking on or at any specific group, but we're just looking at some cold, hard data. And so we have to pay attention. And if 67% of the kids say that they're not engaged, then there is a student engagement problem. And so that's something that needs to be attended to.
One of the reasons that we say that root causes are supported by data is that if we don't have data to support it, it's just a hunch. And
Right.
so what you might think is a problem, it might not really be a problem at all. It could be that lots of our kids report that they are engaged and that something else is the problem. So when we back up our hunches with data, then we know where to focus. What we find is that schools that improve tend to carefully identify both general and specific root causes for each SMART goal, and then they implement interventions to address those root causes. Oh, our slide's not showing. So, so our big question when we look at data is why aren't our students achieving at a higher level?
And we're not checking out the ATA. We do have data.
No.
Yeah. Which will show up on your slide.
There was a data there was a D moved over. So we're looking for clues in the data. When we examine our achievement goals, the SMART goals, we're going to start going through our data and looking through the reports. What we have reports are will be in this discussion up in instructions, and we'll go over where to find those later. But as you see, we have expectations, curriculum rigor, instruction, classroom assessment, extra help, student guidance, and learning environment. And those are the 7 areas that we have found over the last going on 30 years that those are the areas that if you make changes there, you really can move achievement data. Those are your biggest bang for the buck.
As we continue that search for those clues in the data, remember that we have a lot of good data now. A lot has been captured there. We have report contents. We have that wonderful survey that those of you who are in update 3, you have brand new shiny survey material. Those of you who are in update 1 and 2, you have fairly new shiny survey material, and you can always redo your surveys. If you know that there's something just out there and it's really bothering everybody, throw in a survey. And remember, those survey questions are answered by students. Remember, we always ask for 95% of the students. We ask for 95% of the teachers. We ask for at least 30 in the parents and community. And the reason that we do that is because we all know if 2 or 3 people, and it kind of goes back to that the student discussions, a handful of people is not going to give you nearly the data and nearly the depth of the data that you're going to get from asking as many people as you can that are associated in some way with your school. And then, very near and dear to my heart are those wonderful short answers. And I know sometimes you wonder why on earth we put you through that. But those short answers, I love reading those because I think when you get it down to where you see what all it is that you're doing and maybe overdoing or underdoing or whatever, that's going to give you a tremendous amount of information. So here's just one of the sample survey data, and this is from the survey, a student survey. And you can see this one is, I expect myself to continue my education after high school. And so you can see when that breaks down, it's always interesting because 88% of the students say, sure, I do, I agree. 100% of the parents, why, absolutely, of course, he or she is going to continue education after high school. There already is a little bit of a disconnect, and that's something obviously that people need to talk about. Look at the community. It went down to 56%, and you had 32 people there, so you've got a good little sampling. And they're saying, you know, I don't know. They're looking at it more from a business point of view, and they're saying, you know, is our economy healthy enough? So, you know, they have their point of view, which is very important to hear. And then your teachers. I expect almost all my students to continue their education after high school. Ah, put teachers and parents in that same room together with that discussion, and you see all the disconnects that are going on. And you also see that none of the parents disagree or are unsure about that, as opposed to, the numbers are pretty high there for the other groups that are just saying, I don't know. I don't know if I agree with this or not. So excellent, excellent data to have those discussions.
I just want to point out that in the survey reports, we always give you first the question that the students answered, followed by the parent, the community, and the teachers. That way you have all the wordings exactly as they appear on those surveys. We like to make it clear and make sure that you have a really good picture of what everybody was answering. So just a little format thing. Oh, and there are arrows.
And there are the arrows. Okay, and then we have the root cause data report, and here's that wonderful expectations report. And like Amy said, she'll show you how all these print out and work so well here in a little bit. But there again, I know it's a lot of questions, but when you really start looking at that, you're going to see the picture of your school in ways that you don't ordinarily have time to look at it. And it's going to give you, it's going to give the council, it's going to give everybody some really good information to have some really good, solid conversations that are very specific to the SMART goals and what's going on and getting that data moving. So here we have an example of a PAI. Increase the percent who passed 10th grade I-STEP math. Now, the old way used to be, okay, we want kids to pass I-STEP math in 10th grade. So we're going to tell them they really need to pass it. And the kids are going to say, we really need to pass it. But that's not giving us some real specific things of assurance that knows it's going to happen. So looking at our PAI, we want the 10th graders passing math. Our SMART goal, we say, we don't want the whole ball of wax here. We want the ones who can master linear equations on that 10th grade I-STEP. So all of a sudden, that nice, sharp SMART goal. And then look at the root causes. And I can remember when we had these discussions, that first one was probably one of our biggest problems, is that it is not reinforced over time in math instruction. We looked at scope and sequence, and there would be these big gapping holes. And then, as if we expect everybody to remember everything year after year. Another thing a lot of times is that the extra help just doesn't exist outside of the classroom. And so, we have to seriously look at that as a time issue, and that these kids still need this help. And then also the students report on a survey that the classroom discipline is making learning difficult. There again, not only that survey, but go back to those very invaluable student summaries and the council summaries and all that information, because I will tell you, after reading hundreds and hundreds of these, especially the students' information, it is out of the mouth of babes. They have some very, very good insight. So never shortchange that information. Looking ahead then to root causes for the council discussion. Now we're going to look at study data, and we're going to find out where do we find all of this data. And to do that, I will turn it over to our IT guru, Miss Amy.
In your discussion, if you're doing the online discussion, over at the top right, we have a section called Instructions. And this set of instructions is loaded with links, as you'll see. Most council members really find it helpful for this particular discussion, if you're doing this online or if you're doing it in person, to work with paper. So we strongly recommend that you print these things out. And I know that in some places where we're working off of smartphones or in the library, depending on where our council members are able to view this, you might not have access to a printer. So I strongly recommend, and you'll see over right above the video, it tells you who your council discussion point person is and how to get a hold of him or her. And you can ask them if they can get you these hard copies so that you can go through the data. Tina and I, we are highlighter sticky note people. When we start going through these reports, we like to circle things, make notes, highlight, because we really, we feel like sleuths. We're really looking at why are we not achieving in this particular area. So the very first thing that you're going to get is the SMART goals report, so that you know these are the areas that we're focused on for the coming year, and this is what I need to find out. Why aren't students achieving in the areas of our SMART goals? Another one that is very key to print, just to help you as you're doing this work, is the root cause review help sheet. And I'm going to show you what that looks like, but it is number 3 in your instructions. And here's a copy of that. So you'll see that your SMART goals are listed down the main part of the page, and then we've given you space to write in, as you're going through the data, to write in your possible root causes, and then down here where your goals are listed, you would then just check. So whenever I have a possible root cause, I want to look and check off which of the goals would be related to that root cause. Which, if I change this root cause, which of my goals would get better? And then, because again, we always want evidence, down at the bottom, you'll cite your evidence for that root cause. So if it comes from your survey report, if it comes from the short answer questions, you'll just put those down across the bottom. So, and this will help you in your discussion. Taking these notes as you go along will help. So then the root cause reports. We break the root cause reports down into the areas that I listed earlier: the expectations, curriculum, instruction, classroom assessment, extra help, student guidance, and learning environment. The survey is given every 3 years, and depending on when your school most recently gave the survey, it'll give the year in step 4, so that you have an idea of how old this data may or may not be. And the reason for new root causes, the reason we go over this, even though our data, we only do it every 3 years, the reason that we want you to look at it is that perhaps you successfully addressed the root causes in your last SIP, your last school improvement plan. If you have fixed a situation, and it's time then to look at what's the next thing we need to work on. It could also be that perspective has changed, that something has happened in our school that we need to look at in a new way. And so we go back to the data and pour through that and see what it is we need to do. We also have some optional data reports. And I call these reports for super sleuths. And these are the drill down reports. When you're looking at your SMART goals, you could very well see SMART goals for students in specific grades, specific genders, specific ethnic groups. We have drill down reports where you can see the student survey questions, the responses for all students, and then just for the group that you're wanting to examine. So those include grade level, gender, race and ethnicity, lunch program status, free or reduced, 21st century scholars, IEP status, parental college, typical report card grades, and we also allow you to create a student group. So if you're wanting to look at boys who are on the lunch program, you can create that student group. Oh, whoops. Let me go back. Sorry, that's a little harder than I thought. Okay. Additionally, we have these optional reports that get into our self-studies. And if you really want bonus points, you can pour over those and see how we've answered questions that deal with, that satisfy Indiana rules and regulations, Title I school-wide requirements, and Title I TAS requirements.
And I'm going to chime in and say, please, 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 please look at those self-studies. And I'll give you a quick example that probably most of you can relate to. When you're going down through and you're answering those questions, most everyone has really positive answers on most of those questions. But the one that I see that keeps running up to the top is parent involvement. You're not satisfied with your parent involvement, the level of it, what kind it is, and all of that. But then very seldom do I see that showing up as an actual root cause that then is going to have an intervention. So really pay close attention to those self-studies in all those areas. And if you see something that's a no, that it's not satisfying you at the time, then let's hop to it and get digging on it, because that very well could be the bugaboo in your achievement data.
The next task for our council, after you've reviewed the data, poured through that, and made your notes, we're going to have you answer questions. And if you're doing this face-to-face, you'll be working usually in groups and talking to your steering team. For those of you who are online, you'll have the online form to fill out. And the questions are the same, whether you're online or you're in person. So in part one, we'll have you answer questions about each of the current root causes. So we'll give you the root cause. So in this case, student behaviors interfere with learning. And we'll ask, do you want to continue this root cause next year or omit this root cause next year? So maybe we've done a lot of work on student behavior and we've seen a lot of progress. We don't feel like we need this to be something to concentrate on now. If you choose to continue this root cause, there's a follow-up question. What revisions, if any, should be made to this root cause for the next year? So if we've written that in a way, if it's student behaviors interfere with learning, and we want to say student behaviors, I'm trying to think of an example, something more specific, you might want to add to that. You would do that and then just save your comments. In part two, we'll ask you if you have additional root causes that should be addressed. And we give you a format for writing that, and that'll make things a little easier for your steering team as they're putting all of this together. So we've asked you to please write your response in this format to increase the percentage of the student group who academic benchmark. You get that from your SMART goals. And then the next part is increase the percentage of all students who, or I'm sorry, the next part is what we need to address. So we're increasing the percentage of all students who earn a B or better on their report card in English, or increase the percentage of third grade boys who read at grade level. Those sound like goals. I'll have a look at that and go over it, but we'll make sure that that makes sense. So, but at any rate, if there are any root causes that you feel need to be added to your school improvement plan for the coming year, this is where you're going to put those comments in. And then in part three, we give you some space for additional thoughts. If there's anything else that concerns you that didn't fit in to the other questions, this is the place to voice your concerns or just any thoughts that you have in the additional thoughts.
So now, after today, the steering team will consider the council input, and I think you're going to have some really good thought and really be encouraging to get people to contribute. Consider this student body input. You know, Amy and I are really fans of that, so make sure that you see that. Consider those state and federal requirements. They're not just hoops to jump through. There are definitely some good questions there that you need to look at. Create your root cause list, and then send the root cause list to the council members to ask for consensus.
So be on the lookout for that. Your council, there's a council, or I'm sorry, a steering team person whose job it is to seek consensus from the council. So you'll be asked for feedback, and please make sure you get back in touch with your steering team so they know that they have consensus on the root causes. So that is it for our council discussion for root causes. If you have any questions, be sure to ask your steering team. And we thank you so much for participating on your School Improvement Council. What you're doing really does make a difference for kids. Even though sometimes it just feels like you're going through a lot of paper, it really does make a difference when you're being thoughtful and thorough with this.
You've got some really good steering team members there that are working really hard, and everybody working together. The worst thing that can happen is your kids will just do better. So have a good evening. Thank you. All righty, back to our steering team. Before writing your root causes, make sure that you, of course, get your input from the council. And did they note root causes in the SI2 root cause reports? Make sure that you get that input from the student body. Those drill down reports, glean over those, look and really make those things useful, because they are so valuable. And then how does a root cause impact student groups identified in the SMART goals? If you have mismatches right now, that's okay. Just go back, drop me an email, tell me that you're going to go back, you're going to redo some SMART goals because you really want them to match up with what's going on. It won't take very long for you to do that, and I would much rather you have me send them back to you, and then you get them right and be satisfied with them, rather than just being close enough, because that's an exercise in misery. And then the self-studies. Do any of those questions identify an actual root cause in your school that you want to address in your SIP? So as we've always said, this is a story of your school. It's not a story of someone else's school. And so you have lots and lots. I know we about paper you to death on this one, but you have so much good information there to really, really make some good decisions.
She didn't say the words laser focused, I don't think, but this is the part where Tina usually says that if your root causes are laser focused, then you're going to have really good interventions and you'll move your data. So be very strategic here, because it can make a lot of difference in your plan. Post-discussion task for the consensus point person. Please remember that you need to seek consensus from your council. And when you're seeking consensus, what you're asking is, can you support the root causes identified? And if not, what would it take for you to do so? And we know that sometimes you go through a round or two of consensus. When you have folks who feel very strongly and passionately, sometimes it takes a time or two to get those honed in. Most of the time, I think it's everybody says, yep, yeah, we can support this. But just in case, just know that what you're doing will help you get buy-in when it comes time to go on your interventions and get things implemented. So that consensus step is important. Now the online demo, we want to go through and look at the process page and make sure we're ready to put in our root causes or edit our root causes. So looking at our steps for February, you are participating in the webinar right now, and we'll have the council video for you to watch and the steering team video. You'll have your student body discussion. Be sure to put that summary in. You'll open your discussion as normal. Oh, I timed out. So if we're doing an in-person discussion, we put in the date and the time for that. And our location. And if you're only doing an online discussion, you just choose the no in-person meeting, online input only. When you also need to select a date for closing your online input, and you want to make sure that that's gives you enough time. Actually, let me back that up a little bit. You want to make sure that that gives you enough time to go through the online input and get your get the follow-up work done. All discussions have an online discussion, and the in-person is an option, but we always do the online discussion in case there are people who can't make it, to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to at least participate that way. So then we click send the invitation. There we go. So all of our invitations have been sent. We have a link for items needed, and if we need to resend invitations, we can come back to this open discussion page. Let's say that Steve Apple contacts me and says that he's accidentally deleted the email and he needs his link. I can go ahead and just click that and it'll send the discussion, the email to him again. And back on the process page, after opening the discussion, be sure that steering team members are monitoring the discussion, and you'll click on monitor and verify your identification, and then you're in the discussion. So keep an eye on that, and just make sure that you're guiding discussion and using any tools that you need if discussion gets off course. The other thing we can do in monitoring, in the monitoring step, is there's a report that tells you who has participated and who has not. And you can also email council members who have not yet participated. So if it's looking like our parents are not getting in there, or we've got some of our faculty who have not yet participated, just send in a follow-up email letting them know that we still need their input. Okay. You'll distribute the current root causes and enter as part of your preparation. And after your discussion in person and online, you'll enter your discussion summary as normal. You cannot submit your root causes. You'll enter your discussion summary, and then you can update your root causes as needed. But you cannot submit your root causes until you have submitted your student body discussion and your council discussion summary, and that those things have met criteria. Because this is one of those steps where that feedback is so important to you forming your root causes. We need to see those before you submit your root causes for review. And let's look at root causes, entering those just as a refresher. So this school that we're using, this is an Update 1 school. We have done some big edits to our SMART goals. So we now have one general root cause that affects all of our SMART goals. We have from last year one SMART goal that we kept, so it has some of our older root causes associated with it. If we've decided that any of these are no longer root causes, we can just delete over here. If we need to edit any of those root causes, we just click the edit button and edit as needed. And to enter new root causes, there at the top of the page, there's add a root cause, and that brings me the form. We start root causes with we are concerned that. We give our evidence to the root cause. If this is a root cause that involves some students more than others, we say yes, and then we identify that student group. So if it's seventh graders who are in special ed, or it is maybe it's all seventh graders or all eighth graders, we just make our selections as needed. And then we also check that which SMART goals this root cause significantly affects. So if this is a general root cause, let's say attendance or parent participation, this would be our first choice is always, this is a general root cause that affects all SMART goals. If it isn't, then you need to look into which of these that this root cause was identified as affecting. And when you've completed everything, you just click the Save button, and then the root cause will appear under any of those goals that you selected in the pop-up box. Does that make sense? Do we have any questions about that?
I'm not seeing it right now, Amy.
Okay. If you do have questions, go ahead and type those in, and we'll get those addressed before we finish the webinar.
We're getting a couple, but they can be answered privately, so we're doing okay.
Okay, great, great. So just want to go back. Yeah, I think that covers everything for the online system this month. And if you have any questions, though, you know that Tina is always available, and we encourage you to get in touch with her early and often.
So now we'll look ahead and see what's coming down the line. So now February, shortest month of the year. It just seems like the longest one. Remember to update root causes. So if you can get everything caught up, and I know I ask you this every month, but if you can get everything caught up by the end of February, you will be sitting pretty, because the interventions will go much smoother and much more nicely, and you won't feel so rushed. So this is the big catch-up month, and also update root causes. In March, then, you'll be updating your interventions, and then April, updating preparations. Please look at your calendars, because I know spring break and Easter and all those holidays and everything are coming in. And some of you, probably farther up north, haven't had the days off like we have had here in the South. So you may be getting out of school fairly quickly. So I know it doesn't seem like it now, but you probably will. And so just, getting those done and getting them while you still have a captive audience is extremely important, because I've talked to a couple of principals in June, and it's kind of a lonely existence trying to get everything wrapped up. So just, anything, anytime, give me a call on that, and we'll get you done.
I also want to remind you all that March is your last live webinar.
Yes.
Yeah, so be sure you're there for that. Interventions are so important, and we want to go through everything about that to make sure it goes smoothly at your school. And then the update for, the webinar for update preparation, we actually just record a video for that, so that at the minute that you have your interventions approved, you can watch that preparation video and get going on your preparation and finish up your plan before you're in the midst of all of the end of year stuff and people leaving the building, because we don't want your poor principals to be all sad and lonely working on finalizing this school improvement plan.
If you need help, I'm here. Sometimes I feel like the old, which I'm going to date myself, feel like the old Maytag repairman right now on Wednesday evenings. It's a pretty lonely existence, but just feel free to call. I'm here from 2 to 8 on Wednesdays, and I'm here from 8 to 2 on the other days, so it's fairly easy to remember. I work through lunch, so I'm available during noon. If you want to, just drop me an email at any time during the weekend or whatever. If I'm available, I'll be checking that. I know some of you are going to start feeling pinched for time. So just, anytime, feel free to call. No dumb questions. No, just, we're good. So just call. And I just had somebody say those root causes are not light reading, and I will agree. I will agree. That is your life story. I know the first time that we did that, I looked at my team members and I said, I never thought I would write a biography, but I think we just did it. And so you are the authors of a lovely biography called Your School, and it's lots of information. So it's really good to have that steering team meeting before you have that council meeting to make sure that it doesn't become a paper rifling evening. So, you know, lots to get through. Pick out a strategic plan of how to do that, and you'll be in good shape.
And don't forget to look in your manual. We'll have your video, or I'm sorry, your presentations and your handouts and everything linked in the manual. So be sure to remember that's where you get all your materials for meetings if you're having them in person. And you can link to those. There's one thing I wonder if I remember to show you. Oops. On your process page. We will make sure that there are links. Let me look in the manual right now. That's the one place I didn't get to today. So we have your root cause update. Yeah, I'll make sure that there are some more links on here to help so that you have easy access to all of the reports that are in the online discussion. In case you're having your big meeting in person, we'll just make sure that those are all easy to get to so that you can get everything printed beforehand. If you are having your discussion in person, Tina mentioned earlier today that when her council met, they broke into small groups, and then they each small group had a packet, and they passed those around and used post-it notes and other ways to make notes for the bigger discussion. Other people like to just get everything to the council, print out every possible report, and kill a forest. But then mail that out and get those in teachers' boxes so that everybody has a chance to look at it before their in-person meeting. So whichever way you want to go with that, I'll get the manual updated and you'll have everything right here so it's easy to get to. And I think that's everything.
I'm answering a question right now.
Okay. We won't close. If anybody has other questions you want to send, or if you'd like to raise a hand, there is a way on there for you to raise a hand, and we can unmute you so that you can ask your question.
And Logansport, you can disregard my response because it will make no sense whatsoever. Okay, Plymouth, that one's going to you. So I think we'll have it. Got your answer.
Great. Okay.
Oh, I love this question thing.
Do you have one more?
Oh, let's see.
Oh, no, that's one of the ones you already.
Okay, I think we're good.
Okay. Again, if you do have any questions, or if you're watching this video archived, be sure to get a hold of Tina and she'll walk you through anything that you need. All right. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you. Have a good evening.